Charles here with Rock Ready UTV again. Today I'm going to talk about and install some of these little bungs. These are made out of chromoly steel, and what these are used for is they get rid of the nuts on the back side of your radius rod bolts that are at the frame here. Everybody knows that those are kind of a pain in the butt to get to on the back side of there. Whether it is that you're doing maintenance, you got to replace bolts, you're replacing your radius rods with some stronger ones. Your hardcore rock crawler or something like that, you bend them jumping, whatever the case may be, it's way easier to not have to get to the nuts on the back side. So we got these little guys. All right, these come in two different sizes, the M10 and the M12. Your 900 XP, your RZR 1000, those use the M10s, and then your RZR turbos starting in 17. The 16 started off as the M10, and then they went to the M12s. So your turbos went to the M12s, your turbo S's, all that stuff went to the M12s. The way you can verify which ones you need, M10s or 12s, if you just take a 15mm socket or an 18mm socket, you can verify it. The M10s, the factory bolts right here for the M10 is a 15mm, and then the M12 bolt uses an 18mm socket. So it's an easy, quick way to check which ones you need. Or if you're wanting to upgrade to M12 bolts, well, then you could obviously get the M12 Weld-in bungs. The first step is to take all of this off of there. Your radius rod plate, he's got the double shear. Get your radius rods all out of the way so that we can drill some holes. These fit inside of a 3/4 inch hole, so real common size drill bit. These also, he's got, like I said, he's got the double shear. You don't necessarily need the double shear radius rod plate once you get these in there, because these greatly increase the strength of the radius rod mounting by making that fixed. You'll notice with the bolts on a single shear plate and the nut on the back side, you can get real bad wear on your bolt threads. You can egg your holes out really bad, so this will completely get rid of that issue right there. So anyways, like I said, take the radius rod plates off and take the 4 radius rods all the way off. We'll get started. Alright, we got the radius rod plate and the radius rod bolts, radius rods all off of there. Next thing we're going to use is a 3/4 inch bit, and we're going to drill out all 4 of the radius rod holes. And then after you drill them out, it's nice to use a larger bit and just kind of countersink the edge a little bit, or you can use a file, but it's easiest just with a larger bit. The reason is because if you look closely, kind of hard to tell on there, the tool on the lathe always leaves like a little radius in there. So if you countersink just a little bit on the hole, it'll allow this bung to actually sit all the way up in there, so that surface is flush on this surface right here. Alright, we have drilled all 4 out, and then I used a larger step bit and just hit them real lightly, so it put a little bit of a chamfer just on this outer edge. Make sure that they all fit in there, which I did already. So next thing I'm going to do is grab a flat disc and clean all this up around here for welding, and then after that we'll position the radius rod plate with spacers and bolts on there. That way you make sure that your bolts going through your radius rod plate are actually aligned with the bung still. Alright, I got all 4 of these cleaned up now so that they're ready to weld. Something else you want to do is these threaded bungs, you need to clean those off, like some brake clean or something like that, because they'll still have some oil on them and everything from the machining process, and I don't clean that off there because that helps prevent them from rusting. So after you get those cleaned up, what I like to do is put your bolts through the radius rod plate that you have, and then I have some extra misalignment spacers, so I'll stack them in there. If you don't have misalignment spacers, you can use the radius rods themselves to actually space this out. But what this does is it ensures that if there is any sort of play in these bungs within the hole that you drilled in the frame, that this is all aligned, because once you weld it, well, that's fixed now. You're not going to have the play anymore like you did with the nuts. So you need to make sure that you do something like this, put the bolt through, put some sort of spacers in there, radius rods or misalignment spacers, and then use some big C-clamps and clamp it up there to the frame. Next thing I'm going to do is break out the welder, and I'll put probably like 2 tacks on each one. That'll just hold it in place. Once you get 2 tacks on each one, take the clamps off, take the bolts out, take the spacers out of the way so it's all exposed. We'll weld them up solid. Alright, you just got them fully welded up on there. What I like to do is hit it with a flap just real fast, just in case, because it double checks your welds, just in case a little bit got too high, or if you're MIG welding like I did these ones, just in case you got a little spatter spot on there or something like that, it knocks it out of the way. Then next, what you do is clean it up a little bit, either wire wheel or wire brush, something like that. Squirt a little primer on it and a little bit of chassis paint. Do your best to try to get some on the back side of it. It's hard to get in there, but do as good as you can. That way you can prevent as much rust as possible on that bare steel. Right, as you can see, we got the black paint on there. Got the radius rods in there, the bolts all bolted in. The bungs do work, even though it brings your radius rods out just a little bit, about an 1/8 inch or so. It still works with the double shear radius rod plate, because this Thunderhawk plate is slotted top and bottom. Make sure you torque your bolts. You can add some Loctite. We suggest putting some Loctite on them. The M12 bolts torque to 70 foot-pounds. The M10 bolts, you torque those to 42 foot-pounds. And that's it. You can get them on rockreadyutb.com.